It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. We begin in town halls and public squares across Michigan, where people are debating whether data centers should be part of their neighborhoods. Some communities have hit pause on data center development, the massive server farms that power artificial intelligence and cloud computing. The concerns are pretty straightforward. These facilities can consume as much electricity as a large city. They often use millions of gallons of water a day, and critics say they deliver very few permanent jobs for the enormous tax breaks they receive. Now Detroit has entered the fray. Last month, the city council voted 6-2 to ask Mayor Mary Sheffield to impose a 2-year freeze on all new data center permits. Council Member Scott Benson is leading that effort. Council Member, welcome.
Robyn, good morning. Thank you for the invitation today to talk about data centers.
Good morning. I want to be clear about something. You've said you're neither for or against data centers.
Yes.
But 2 years is a long pause. I mean, it's twice what most Michigan communities are asking for. And your own council president, James Tate Jr., said 6 months should be enough. So why does Detroit need 2 years?
So we want to make sure that we have the proper opportunity and we're not being rushed. And so as Irma Leapart would say, who is part of our data center task force working group, haste makes waste. I'm not saying that it's going to take 2 years, but that's what we're asking for. But right now, we don't have a moratorium, and the work continues. And so we've had our first meeting of our data center working group. We've had voices from the business community to our sustainability practitioners, advocates. We've had DTE. We have labor unions at the table. We have our city planning commission there, as well as the mayor's staff and her team members as well. And so we're all working for regulation. And what we want to make sure is that we have community-informed regulations that will protect our residents, as well as provide rules of the roads for any data centers that want to locate within the city of Detroit. And right now, we don't have any regulations. And if you talk to anybody who is in that space, they'll tell you the number one obstacle to having a data center within a municipality is not having regulations. And what we don't want to do is have somebody apply for one, not have the regulations, and have it go where it shouldn't go and have a negative impact on our residents in the city of Detroit. We want to have community-informed, quality, well-thought-out regulations here in the city of Detroit.
So you're really trying to slow things down in order to, what I'm gathering, minimize harm for folks. I mean, I do want to think a little bit more deeply about some of the reasons that you may be doing this, and you can push back or agree here. I mean, you chair the Green Task Force.
That's true.
And as part of that, you know that many industries exist in Detroit, and in addition to providing jobs, they also cause damage.
That's true.
They add to traffic. They make biking. I know you're a big biker, and walking harder. They create more pollution. In terms of data centers, your building's department director, David Bell, said protecting residents from data center impacts is especially important given how Detroit has been hurt by industry in the past.
And I was glad to hear that.
Tell me why you were glad to hear that.
So number one, it just lets us know that we are being proactive when it comes to protection and being thoughtful when it comes to how industry impacts our residents. And so, and as you said earlier, I am neither pro nor against the data centers. What I am for is quality, well thought out, proactive, community-informed regulations. And what you don't want to do is try to build a plane while you're flying it. Let's slow this down, as you said, and make sure that we have regulations on the books. And as the industry will even tell you, not having regulations is what is more harmful than anybody when it comes to data centers and them trying to locate somewhere. Because if you get one that gets through because you don't have regulations and it harms your residents, then you have a problem. If you don't have regulations and the community agrees with that location, but they can't come to an agreement, then you're also harmed. You're reducing your general fund. You're not having construction jobs in your community. And so what we want to do is make sure that we are prepared for what is coming and that we're well informed and we're informing our residents. We're educating my colleagues and myself as well as the other decision makers at the city of Detroit.
I wonder if you see this at all as a power battle, because when we look at the players involved, they are some of the most powerful in the world. We're talking about the people who are running AI companies. We're talking about Silicon Valley. We're also talking about utilities. And then we're talking about Detroit and Detroiters, many of whom live in poverty. Do you see this as a power struggle at its core?
I don't see it as a power struggle. I see it as me and my colleagues doing our job. I see this as the mayor doing her job as well. Businesses are going to come. People want to do business in the city of Detroit. And as that smartphone I see that you have there, it uses AI and it needs data centers. But it doesn't mean that we have to have hyperscale, or maybe we can't have hyperscale data centers in the city of Detroit. And that's what typically causes most of the concern. And for good reason, the use of utilities, the use of our environment, the use of water, I mean, they use it at a very high rate, as you just said earlier. But we want to make sure that we have the rules and regulations in place to minimize and, if not eliminate, any negative impact or not allow those scale at all, or make sure that we have the proper ecosystem in place to welcome those who fit what we want as a city and as residents in the city of Detroit.
Okay, Councilmember Benson, you got me. I traded in my flip phone yesterday. I've now got this smartphone here. This. Oh, wow. Okay,
Robyn, I got a flip phone.
You have a flip phone smartphone, though. That's quite stylish. And I like how that turns into something much smaller, but it still has a beautiful big screen that is not an old school flip phone.
It is not. You're absolutely right.
This is a big experiment that we're doing right now with AI and data centers. I know, again, as you have said, you're not opposed to data centers outright. You're neutral on them. Where do you stand on AI, which, as you have astutely noted, is powered by data centers? So there's something really interesting happening right now, and that is lots and lots of people are banding together and saying, we don't want these data centers in our neighborhoods. I am curious, how many of those folks are not using AI in some way, shape, or form?
So, Robyn, it's probably pretty few of them. Here's the other part. When people talk about data centers and the threat, they're typically talking about the hyperscale. Those data centers start the conversation at 1,000 acres of land that they need. We don't have 1,000 contiguous acres of vacant land in the city of Detroit. That's not a threat to us. And we have some data centers that have been here for some close to a decade now. But it's how do we regulate them coming in? But your question was about AI.
Yeah.
And so I use AI. I encourage my staff to use it. I took a course 2 summers ago in Palo Alto on AI. And so I don't fear it. I use it as leverage to make my team more efficient. But it's here and it's coming. We also have to worry about a bust. And we've had bubbles when it comes to sectors in the past. So let's also be clear-eyed when we talk about this. Everything, and there's going to be $1 trillion of investment, that may not materialize based on the trajectory of the technology. And as we've seen chips that use less and less energy than what they did just a year previous. And so they may be able to solve their own challenges when it comes to energy use just based on the technology. And so we also have to keep that in mind. But for the present and for the current reality, I need to make sure that we have regulations to protect our residents here in the city of Detroit and to make sure that we have an ecosystem that is both welcoming as well as protective of our quality of life here in the city. Because data centers, they also bring property tax revenue. They also bring construction job income tax and construction jobs initially. They are not a developer or creator of long-term permanent jobs. Very few jobs go into monitoring that technology. But on the upfront side, that is property tax, and they don't get tax incentives, and they wouldn't from the city of Detroit. They don't need them. I mean, they're an industry that has the revenue stream and doesn't need to have that level of support when it comes to a tax incentive. So they're paying full freight for the property taxes. So, I mean, there's upsides on the general fund side, but we also have to balance that against the health of our environment, our residents, and the quality of life.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, council member, is that you are most concerned, dare I say skeptical, of these larger scale proposals that are, let's say, 1,000 acres, which isn't even doable in the city of Detroit, probably. There is already a data center proposal in play in Detroit, and it is on 14.5 acres of city-owned land on Shoemaker Street on the east side between the Stellantis Jeep plant and Coleman A. Young Airport. The city put out a general request for proposals, meaning what should we put here? Come back to us and tell us what you think. And a data center is what came back. Are you in favor of this plan?
So we don't have regulations yet. If that comes to the city council table, I am going to just speculate. Dangerous, but I will speculate on this one, that it wouldn't pass. We don't have regulations in place. And so what we're doing is making sure that we're prepared to have that conversation. I also don't know if that's a real deal. Everybody's a developer until it's time to cut a check. Let's actually see if that's a real deal. And so, Robyn, I'm not going to speculate on those. What I am going to do is continue to work with our task force and our stakeholders working group and get some regulations in place. And we are pragmatically optimistic that we can get this done by 31 December 2026. That's less than 2 years. It's more than 6 months, but less than 2 years. And I believe it's reasonable. We've had conversations with our city planning commission staff, and they believe that they can get this through the planning commission and to city council for a vote prior to the end of the year. And I also want to remind people, this is a legislative process, the development of city planning, of zoning ordinances. This is not an administrative process, but we're being informed and we're partnering with the administration and with the other stakeholders in this space to make sure we come up with some community prioritized and well thought out regulations for the zoning of potential data centers within the city of Detroit.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Scott Benson, Detroit City Council member for District 3. We're talking about his push for a 2-year moratorium on data center development in the city of Detroit. You have mentioned a few times, council member, this working group, which you convened last week, and it included representatives from DTE Energy. DTE would supply power to virtually every major data center proposed in Southeast Michigan. Now, it's told investors it's pursuing up to 8.4 gigawatts of data center load. That would nearly double its total power demand. Okay. When DTE told your working group that data centers actually make the grid more affordable for existing customers, I'm wondering how much weight you give that claim from a company that, let's face it, has a huge amount of skin in the game.
So that's a very good point, a very good point. So I'm also a trust but verify person. DTE, that's fantastic, great. Now we also have our sustainability advocates. I've got my green task force. I've got engineers at the city of Detroit who can also help us to verify. We also have the state of Michigan who regulates our utilities on our gas as well as our electricity side. So there will be others who can weigh in and say, that's accurate, Scott, or Councilman, that's not accurate, and this is the truth. And so I'm not saying DTE is being untruthful. What I'm saying is I am going to verify these claims as well. And so for me, it's very important. This is why we have the stakeholders from so many different spheres of the universe when it comes to being impacted by data centers.
Could I ask you to be candid, council member, and tell me what your reaction was initially? Was it one of skepticism from what you were hearing from DTE Energy at this working group? I know you're concerned about not damaging some relationships you've got going on here, but I'm asking you to be a bit honest about this.
Am I skeptical? I tend on this one to believe what they're saying just based on the direction they have to go, because the narrative is so negative in that space. And I mean, honestly, DTE doesn't have the best reputation if you go out into the community.
I mean, that's maybe an understatement.
But Robyn, I'm glad you said it and not me.
I mean, I talk to the people all the time, just like you, you know.
I do too. And so, but in this situation, DTE understands that if they want to bring on data centers and it's going to increase people's DTE bill electricity costs, that's a non-starter for people, and it's going to be a non-starter on the elected officials as well. So DTE, and what I'm learning, and I had the same conversation with Detroit Water and Sewers Department, and they're also saying that, hey, this would not cause an increase. It would actually allow for the rates to go down, and we can talk about that more. But I tend to believe them in this situation, because what you see is that the data centers, because of their deep pockets, they're going to have to come on and make those infrastructure investments themselves. So they're going to be the ones putting up that capital funding versus the public having to, the ratepayers, to put increase their rates to build that capital funding. So I tend to believe them right now, but this is also where I trust, but I verify. And so I've got others who are going to come back with data and information and tell me, Scott, that's true, or Scott, it's not.
What's an ideal scenario for the city of Detroit when it comes to it coexisting with data centers and with AI in your world?
A perfect scenario is we get to develop vacant, unused, dilapidated land. That data center is going to come in there. It's not going to harm our environment. It's going to help improve our air quality. It's going to use all green energy in which to power it. It's not going to increase our water rates. It's not going to increase our energy rates. It's going to employ thousands of individuals on the construction side, and we'll get hundreds employed on the long-term job side. It's going to fill our coffers with the general fund with great tax revenue. That is a very rosy and optimistic picture, one that is probably, if not impossible, but there's going to be something in there. And so there will be general fund increase. There will be construction jobs that will be created. We will scrutinize this, and the regulations are going to speak directly to the health impacts and the environmental impacts. And the administration has made it very clear that they are human-centered, and they're going to weigh in here as well, which I love to hear. But it doesn't mean we can't come up with well-informed, community-informed regulations that work and create an ecosystem where data centers do want to locate. And remember, we need jobs. We need our property to be redeveloped. And because of a 1,000-acre site that's going on 50 miles from the city of Detroit is not what we want and wouldn't fit here, doesn't mean that a 14-acre or 14.4-acre site couldn't fit and work well within our community. But we need to have the regulations on the books, and we do not have them now, which is what we're going to have by the 31st of December, 2026.
Councilmember, you have painted a very rosy picture, and
you asked me to. Now, Robyn, you asked me to.
I did. Let that be on the record. I have asked you for the rosiest picture possible. We'd be lucky, perhaps, if we could find something in the middle of that. We'd be extremely lucky. You chair the Green Task Force, as I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. You created the Wealth Generation Task Force to close the racial wealth gap. I mean, I want to go back to something that we touched on very briefly, and it is about environmental justice, essentially, because you've spent your career trying to make Detroit greener and more prosperous.
Successfully.
Data centers promise capital, but as we've been discussing, they consume a lot of resources. So now it's not the rosy picture that I'm asking for. Now I'm asking for reality from you. How do you hold both of those things at the same time? I mean, where do data centers fit into that nexus?
So, Robyn, that's a great question as well. And I hold that easily. And so I do want to make one modification, that the Wealth Generation Task Force, that is to move people out of poverty into the middle class, retain our middle class, as well as make Detroit an attractive space for our middle class families to return who have left the city of Detroit. And I also want to make sure we put money in your pocket. Green Task Force, we are all about making Detroit the greenest, most sustainable city on the planet. And I want to also be very proud that we've done that. But I'm learning. about the data center. And there's lots of myths and information and misinformation that's out there. So I'm educating myself to make sure I know what we're doing, and we don't have regulations, and we have to have them on the books. And so if data centers aren't a good fit, then my colleagues, when it comes to a vote, they'll make it very clear that they're not a good fit for us. But if we can provide the ecosystem and the protections necessary, and remember, this is going to be a community-informed regulation. So there will be public hearings. There will be lots of opportunity for feedback. And we have those voices at the table. So this is not going to be a one-sided conversation. There are very nuanced conversations here. And I'm looking forward to them.
So in other words, as that DTE representative said, we'll take our business to Southfield if you all don't want it in Detroit. What you're saying is if the regulations aren't on the books, then see ya. Go to Southfield.
I'm saying that haste makes waste, just like Irma Leapart said, and I'm saying we're going to have regulations by the end of the year.
Council Member Scott Benson, District 3, Detroit City Council. The working group he convened meets next on May 8th. Mayor Sheffield has not yet acted on the moratorium. We'll be following this. You can find links to the reporting that I referenced today at WDET.org. Councilmember Benson, thank you so much.
Robyn, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Up next, all but 2 Michigan counties are under flood watch through tonight. We'll discuss how Metro Detroit leaders are creating more green infrastructure. What is that? To prevent damages from flooding. That's next on the Metro. Stay with us.